Yeah, I always like to tell people like every fan base is a lot more similar than you think because every fan base has a section of his fans that hates its team, and every fan base
Yeah.
has a section of his fans that want to fire the coach. Even if it's Bill, they want to fire the coach.
Oh, trust me, that's been loud. They were 1-3. That's been loud this. I'm not on that. I'm not in that group, but that's been loud this year sometimes.
Every fan base. So I always like to bring on people who cover the opposite team to make sure that we have their perspective because who knows the team better than the person who lives their team day in and day out. I have Alex Barth from 95.8. Did I mess it?
98.5.
98.5. I'm sorry, I messed that up.
Oh, good.
But just from a Patriots fan perspective, how has this has been a weird year for both of us, right? Where the quarterback situation isn't what we expected, and then there's the whole being down to Bradley Zapp, and then Bailey Zapp, and Brian Hoyer. Mac Jones has that high ankle sprain; he might come back soon. Well, what's the vibe been there just in general for Patriots fans?
Well, it really shifted this week after they beat the Lions. I think a lot of people were worried about truly the direction this team was going, and if they'd lost to the Lions, kind of what that would mean. Now they come out, they shut them out, they blow them out. So I think people are lifted up a little more. Half the fan base, I think everybody's happy. Half of it is because Mac Jones sounds like he's very close to coming back. The other half because they think Bailey Zappi might be better. I don't know about that, but definitely I would say the most optimistic week of the season thus far this week here in New England.
What's building into that? Like, is it just the optimism about the quarterback, or is it like everything's looking more like its usual Belichickian self?
I think the quarterback's a big part of it. There's some other, they got Tyquan Thornton back off IR last week. He was their second round pick, 50th overall wide receiver out of Baylor. Ran a 4.28 40 at the combine, and this is a team that has not had, that kind of speed on the offensive side of the ball in a long, long time. So people are really excited about him. Sort of had a limited role last week, kind of easing him back in, but with the release of Lil Jordan Humphrey yesterday, maybe he gets a bigger role here moving forward. The defense is really starting to click. Matthew Judon was just named AFC Defensive Player of the Week, had a couple of sacks last week, and another rookie, Jack Jones, fourth-round corner out of Arizona State. He had his second pick in as many games, and it was really just an impressive interception on both the physical and mental levels. So honestly, I know I just mentioned Judon, but I think it's some of the younger players. Ramondre Stevenson, second year back, had a career high 161 yards last week on the ground. I mentioned Thornton. I mentioned Jack Jones. Kyle Duggar, third year safety, had a scoop and score last week, made another really nice play to break up a screen from the second level. It's been a while since people in New England, I think, really got excited about some of these draft picks. And I know the Patriots draft history has kind of been in the spotlight in recent years, right? Guys like N'Keal Harry, guys like Juwan Williams, but they kind of got a young core now that seems to be finding its stride and might be rolling. So there's excitement for that. The quarterback situation as well. And you shut out the top scoring offense in the league. Like, people are going to get fired up for that. That's not something that happens very often.
It's interesting too. This week you come up and you play another offense that on paper puts up really good numbers. On the Browns offense, even with Jacoby Brissett, has been amongst the highest in many metrics this year. Defensively, what do you think is going to be the key for you guys to stop the Browns?
And just for the record, you're talking to a Jacoby Brissett fan here. Like 2 years ago,
I forgot he was over there.
before we drafted him, before they signed Cam, everybody's like, well, who should they, should they go get this guy? Should they go get that guy? And everybody wanted Jimmy Garoppolo back. And I was sitting here saying, no. Wrong former Patriots backup quarterback. I'd rather have Jacoby Brissett.
It's funny how Jimmy Garoppolo always follows like the Jacoby Brissett discourse. Like wherever Jacoby Brissett is, Jimmy Garoppolo's there, because that happened to us this year where we got Jacoby Brissett to start during the suspension, and everybody was telling us you got to go get Jimmy G back to start. And it's like I always felt Jacoby's a bit underrated, right? He doesn't have the win-loss success of a Jimmy Garoppolo, but he's stats wise he's a much better player.
And the other thing is, even if he's, call it, even if he's close to the player, Jimmy Garoppolo is, right? He's going to give you 16, 17 games. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to give you, 10? in a good
Yeah,
year,
that's true.
right? He's always hurt. So availability is the best ability. That's a big Bill Belichick line. And uh, I don't think Jacoby Brissett's – he played with a broken thumb on his throwing hand one game here in New England. Started a game with a broken thumb. Anyway, back to your point. It's funny about the matchup because the Browns are actually built a lot like the Lions stylistically, philosophically, when it comes to their offense, right? They're a team that throws the ball well, but really they thrive through their running game, a strong power running game, Nick Chubb, a good offensive line. So I think the Patriots can do a lot of what they did last week, make some adjustments for certain trends, but for the most part, carry it over. And some of the things they did last week, they generally run a 5 defensive back base, but normally it's with 3 corners and 2 safeties. Last week, they actually put a 3rd safety on the field. They took that slot corner off on early downs and obvious rundowns. So that's something I think could come back this week. They actually ran some 4-3, which they haven't done in years, but they went to 4-3, looks a bit last week when the Lions were really getting going running the football. That's something I wonder if we see it come back next week. They didn't blitz a ton. They just sort of played assignment football at the second level, and I think that helped them prevent some big runs from turning into massive runs because, the Lions were going to get theirs. Nick Chubb's going to get his this week, I'm sure, but kind of curtailing what would happen there, I think is big. So I think the Patriots can actually carry over quite a bit of their game plan from what they did last week defensively into this one.
It's gonna be an interesting game too because they both I honestly when I know the Browns are playing against a team that's kind of more inefficient but like high powered like a Chargers or the Bengals, I feel better about this team because their style that they can play up against kind of like hurts them because we can hold the ball long and we can win time of possession and limit possessions for them, and then kind of exploit their inefficiency. Teams like the Patriots worry me with this team because of how long it takes both sides of the ball to score. So if you're the Patriots, Patriots aren't really a quick strike offense, even though they had some big plays this year. Nelson Aguilar over, what was that, Minka Fitzpatrick? No, it was Ahkello Witherspoon that he mossed over there
against Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So they've both had big plays, but it's like when you run into that, it's like whoever's just playing better on a given day is probably going to win that game. And this team has had massive problems being consistent. Are you worried about any game wreckers to that game plan for the Patriots defense? Things that can just happen that will just throw that out the window for you guys?
So it's going to be interesting to see how they match up on Amari Cooper. If Jalen Mills has been the number 1 corner, but he's been hurt. He's been dealing with a hamstring. He didn't play 2 weeks ago against Green Bay, and then he was limited last week. If he's back fully healthy, I think he's a pretty solid matchup for Cooper. I think he can relatively take care of Cooper. If he's not full go, Jonathan Jones has been excellent on the boundary. He was their slot corner here for years, and this year they moved him out to the boundary, and I was pretty skeptical about it. I'll be honest. He's been excellent, but he's 5'9", so you worry about him defending bigger receivers. And then Jack Jones, who I mentioned, the rookie, who has been very good in spots, but he's still a rookie, and you still see it from time to time. He can still get shook by a savvy receiver, and Cooper's been in this league for a long time. He knows how to do that. So he's the one guy I'd worry about. Obviously, Chubb as well. Chubb in the offensive line, they can break big plays. And the Patriots' run defense has been hit and miss. But I think a lot of their issues going into that Lions game were injuries. And a lot of those guys that were banged up are healthy now. So I actually feel okay about them stopping the run. Like I said, Chubb's going to get his. I'm not saying he's going to have an insignificant game, but if they can hold him to 80, 85 yards, I think you chalk that up as a win, and I don't think that's totally unrealistic. Cooper's the one guy that if they don't have Jalen Mills, if he gets going and they can start throwing the ball, and then the Patriots got to drop back into 2-3 deep looks, it's going to open that running game up for Cooper more.
It's going to be interesting, especially with Chubb this year. He's kind of running at a more historic clip than he's ran before, where it's like, I think he's at 6.1 yards per carry right now. And he's leading the league in rushing yards. So he's been especially good, even playing these heavy boxes. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does against the Patriots because, I don't know, this Browns team has weird games against the Patriots all the time. Now let's flip sides of the ball. Let's talk about the matchup for you guys offensively versus the Browns defense. This is the Browns defense has struggled to stop the run. What's the Patriots run game looking like in New England?
Well, this week's going to be interesting because it had been Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris kind of splitting the time. And that's a setup I love because they're both big, physical, bruising running backs, and they can kind of body punch a defense. Well, one's on the field, the other one's kind of resting up on the sideline, and you'd see it late in games where the defense is worn down and the Patriots running backs still have their legs under them. Damian Harris hurt his hamstring last week. He's going to miss, we don't know how many games, but he's going to miss this game for sure. So there's not a ton of depth behind him. They have a rookie, Pierre Strong, who's the only other healthy back on the roster right now, in addition to Stevenson. They really don't use rookie running backs here. I mean, it's a trend that goes back as long as Bill's been here. So maybe he gets involved, maybe he doesn't. He's kind of a speed zone, faster zone rusher. He's not as much of a stylistic fit for what they've done the last couple of weeks as Stevenson is. They've got a couple guys on the practice squad. J.J. Taylor's been a guy who's been on and off the roster here the last couple of years. They've got another rookie in Kevin Harris, who's more that big bruising style of running back. He was a 6th-round pick, led the SEC in rushing in 2020. And then they've got Lynn Bowden, who's kind of a hybrid running back, wide receiver, was a star at the University of Kentucky, spent some time with the Dolphins. And then that's it. So I personally wonder if they bring in another back this week. I don't think they can hand the ball to Ramondre Stevenson 30 times again. It's just not sustainable. They're going to need him at the end of the year. They can't run him into the ground right now. But maybe that's the route they go. If they do go that route, he had 29 carries last week. I wonder about him late in the game if it gets to that point. If they spell it, I still think it's going to be a heavy dose of Stevenson. But the bigger question becomes, can you get by running the football with whether it's J.J. Taylor, whether it's Kevin Harris, whether it's Pierre Strong, whoever it is? You need to be able to get by with that back because it's either going to be Bailey Zappi, who has been impressive given the circumstances. 4th-round rookie, played in a very tailored offense in college at Western Kentucky. He's a bit out of his comfort zone, but he's looked good. He really hasn't turned the ball over. Don't let the interception fool you. That hit Nelson Aguilar right in the hands, popped straight up in the air, and was caught by a safety. So Zappi delivered that ball on the money. But he's not going to necessarily go out and win you the game. You need a running game to support him. And even if Mac Jones is back, he's not going to be 100%. You're still going to need to supplement the passing game with the rushing game. I don't think you can ask him to drop back 35, 40 times in this game, especially against that Browns pass rush, right? So that's a major question this week is what exactly is the Patriots rushing game going to look like without Damian Harris? They have some serious choices to make here as they get ready and kind of put the game plan together.
Yeah, and it's going to be an interesting game plan because you would think this is the week. Like, Browns just gave up 236 yards to Austin Eckler and, like, a couple of dudes, just regular guys.
Yeah.
So you would think, hey, this is the week to run it. Browns been terrible against run, even dating back to the Atlanta game before that. Is that just going to be the strategy for Bill? Like, do you think he's just going to keep it simple in that way, or do you think he tries to? Or it's not Bill. It's Joe Brett, not
Patricia.
Matt Patricia, and Joe Judge Joe Jackson they got over there. So do you think they keep this simple over there in New England, just run the ball a million times, or do you think this is something where they feel like they have to get more things going?
I think they'll run the ball a lot. One thing I think we will see them go to that they didn't go to as much last week, I was surprised, in these spots where maybe they're limited at running back, but it's a game they know they got to run. They'll get creative. They'll start running end arounds. They'll start running pop passes, things like that, reverses. So again, I think they're going to run the ball a lot. The question is how they do it. Is it all on Stevenson's plate? Do they split it up with backs? There was a game last year where I think it was Stevenson that was hurt at that point, and it was just Harris. And again, they didn't have a lot of depth at the position on the team. And Kendrick Bourne carried the ball 4 or 5 times. They just kind of kept running end arounds to him, and they worked. He's really good with the ball in his hands. Tyquan Thornton's another guy I talked about earlier, the rookie with the 4.28 40, who, if you just get him the ball in space, he's going to make it work however you get him the ball. So I still think ultimately they end up going run heavy, but I think you're going to see some sort of, not necessarily like full-on trick plays, but I think you're going to see them run the ball in some creative ways in this game.
So do you guys utilize a lot of misdirection and like just a regular run sets, like not just like end arounds, but like counters and stuff like that? Or are you guys heavy in that in this Patriots offense? Because I know that's been a problem. Like, we just had to trade for Deion Jones because one of our starting linebackers has been terrible with it.
So they have in the past. Now it's a new offense, right? Josh McDaniels was here for a long time, and he left to go coach the Raiders this year. It's been a big part of what they do in the past. They haven't done it as much this year, but the offensive system has been kind of stagnated. They tried overhauling it in training camp. It didn't work. It looked horrible. So they've had to sort of reinstall it over the first couple weeks of the season. And then right when it looked like they maybe had something in place, Mac Jones gets hurt. And then it's been Bailey Zappe's offense ever since, which looks a little different than what Jones's did or what they were doing in the preseason. So we really have no idea ultimately of what this offense looked like, because we're, even going back to camp, we're 2 months into the season, right? July, August, September, 3 months into the season, and they've run 3 different offenses. So yes, historically, they've been a big counter team. If Josh McDaniels was still here, I'd say it's going to be counters and draws all day, because Josh McDaniels loves that stuff. Right now, it's a little harder to forecast, but I'd be surprised if there was none of that in the game plan. Against Detroit last week, Detroit's another very, very aggressive defense. They take that first read, all 11 guys fly to it, right? So they were running play action. They were running screens, things like that. It worked because, the Browns kind of operate the same way defensively. I would think the Patriots will pick up on that and put some of that in.
It's going to be an interesting matchup. Alex, I want to thank you so much for coming in here and giving us this insight about the Patriots. Can you let everybody know where to find you again?
Yeah, you can check out my work, 98.5 The Sports Hub, 98.5thesportshub.com here in Boston. I also host, it's brand new, the Catch 22 Patriots podcast. That's with the team on Patriots.com. Myself and Evan Lazar, and we'll have a new episode. I don't know if you're posting this. We're recording Wednesday. I don't know when you're posting it, but we have a new episode up on Wednesday, so today.
All right. Also, just before you leave, in general, I'm not asking for a win-loss prediction or anything like that. How are you guys feeling about this game on the scale of we should win?
The thing about Patriots fans is everybody feels differently. Like, there's a real wide. Some people hate this team, man. Some Patriots fans love rooting against this team. It's very weird. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think as long as Isaiah Wynn and Trent Brown hold up on the edge, they'll be fine. But the way this season has gone, that's kind of a big if. And this is a big challenge. I don't need to tell you, Myles Garrett, David Clown, like, this is legit. This is probably, this is the toughest edge defenders they faced all year and probably will face. So if they can hold, that's the key matchup to the game. If the Patriots can hold up at the tackle spot on the offensive line, I think they're all right. Whether or not that happens, it's a little tough to tell.
Yeah, I always like to tell people, like, every fan base is a lot more similar than you think, because every fan base has a section of its fans that hates its team, and every fan base has a section of its fans that want to fire the coach. Even if it's Bill, they want to fire the coach.
Oh, trust me, that's been loud. They were 1-3. That's been loud this year. I'm not on that. I'm not in that group, but that's been loud this year sometimes.
Every fan base. I remember I went to school out in Youngstown near Pittsburgh during like the Triple B Big Ben era. What I mean? Like, they were good.
Yeah.
Every year, Pittsburgh fans would be telling me how they need to fire Tomlin. Tomlin's terrible, all this stuff. And I'm just like, every fan base wants to fire their coach, even if it's Bill, which is crazy to me.
Even if it's Bill, yep.
Yeah, which, we did fire Bill. So,
that's true.
Yeah. So it can happen. But again, Alex, thank you for coming on. Appreciate your time. And everybody else at home, y'all have a great day. Have a good night.